This is New Rural Virginia, reclaiming rural leadership through conversation featuring real voices, real issues from the heart of the Commonwealth. Yes, Virginia, rural Democrats are real and they vote. Welcome back. You're listening to New Rural Virginia podcast. I'm Parson Brown.
And I'm Larry Wohlers. So, Parson, we took a little break after Thanksgiving. Actually, a pretty long break.
Yeah.
I guess we all kind of needed to recover from eating way too much.
Oh, totally.
Right. Although I have to say, as much as that turkey and stuffing was good, it was that amazing turkey gobble imitation that you gave us on our last podcast. That's really stayed with me. Truly iconic.
I'm glad you liked it.
Oh, it was great. So what about you? What have you been thinking about?
Well, first off, thank you again for the turkey gobble compliment. But I've moved on. It is Santa Claus season now. You may have noticed in our intro today. This is just actually who I really am, Larry. Though I make phone calls to some of the kids in my family and some other folks as Santa, and I'm Santa now. But seriously, what I've been thinking about, not just from our last episode, but from all the conversations we've had, all the positive energy, talking with our candidates and organizers, voices here in rural Virginia, I'm looking forward to the things that we can do together. We're in good company, I think.
Absolutely. It's been a pretty darn good year for rural Democrats and for us here at New Rural Podcast. It's been a great year. I mean, it's been our only year, so it's a great year.
The best yet.
Yep, such best yet. But what about 2026, right? I mean, what should we be hoping for in the new year, right? You go first.
Well, again, what I'm hoping is that we can keep up the momentum, that we can stay connected.
That's right.
Some folks didn't win their elections, but they worked hard. They put up good fights and some really great campaigns. And whether they're looking to run for another office or run again, I hope that they stay involved and engaged.
Absolutely.
Because we've got some great, just really awesome people in our region. I'm thrilled about that. So I'm looking forward to collaborating and seeing who else we can talk to and what is going to be the next move for rural Virginia and the Commonwealth as a whole.
That's right. Well, I'm going to go just a little bit policy wonk on you.
Okay.
This last year with our podcast with candidates, we've talked a lot about protecting things in rural Virginia, right? Protecting health care, protecting reproductive rights, protecting affordability. And of course, that's all great and important. But for 2026, I would really love to see us, and by us, I mean rural Democrats and rural Virginians writ large, aim a little higher and talk about building rural prosperity. Because, when people talk about affordability, that's what they really mean, right? They want prosperity. They want to be making enough steady income so they can afford the things and their families need without worrying about how they're going to pay the bill tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Well, and that is what we've been developing for our next step, Larry.
That's right.
Our new initiative here.
That's right. We were talking about everyday family level prosperity, and so we have another election coming up, right? There's an election every year in Virginia. And
always.
This year we have some congressional districts coming up again. And here in rural Virginia, we've got a number of Democrats running for the nomination in the 6th district, the 9th district, and so on. And we just said, let's have a conversation with these candidates that focuses, in large part on this question. What would be a Democratic strategy for rural prosperity, right?
Yeah, we want to encourage and challenge each other to think outside the box, think within the Commonwealth and beyond.
Yep. Because the Republicans keep telling us that the way to make things better is to have low taxes and less government. And we see that hasn't worked out very well for folks here in rural Virginia. So let's take a look at with these candidates over the next few months, what the Democratic approach to that might be. And we've got some great candidates to talk about that with, including starting today, right?
Yeah.
We have Pete Barlow with us.
Yes. Hopefully this will be just the first of many conversations.
That's right. Yeah, Pete's somebody that you and I have known for a while.
Yeah, had the opportunity to meet him at the rural retreat a while back.
That's right. He's running in the 6th district, but he's got deep family roots in the Valley, and he really has seen how the rural economy has changed over the years. So let's see what he has to say. Welcome, Pete.
Welcome, Pete.
Hey, thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Hey,
Parson.
Pete.
Appreciate you guys.
Hey, we're so happy to have you. Before we get into all of these really important issues, if you don't mind taking just a minute to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for office.
Yeah, thank you. I am a local guy, born and raised in Rockingham County, and the product of over 10 generations, like Larry said, in the Shenandoah Valley. But I've spent nearly 15 years in federal government, nearly 17 in government overall. Started in state parks down at Douthit State Park. Love that park over in Allegheny County. But the biggest disaster that we all are facing, and I'm an emergency manager, the biggest disaster that we're facing right now is not natural. It's the one in Congress, because we're supposed to have 3 co-equal branches. And right now we don't have any semblance of that. And we got largely congressional Republicans who are ceding their power to exact habeas corpus and some of these things that we've come to recognize as the foundation of who we are as Americans. And
That's right.
So that's a huge thing for me. I'm also trained as a nurse, and I felt like this is the year that I need to get out and represent, because holy cow, 31,000 people in this congressional district alone are looking to lose their eligibility for Medicaid for preventative health. We're talking pennies on the dollar, guys. I mean, if those people don't get preventative health care, they're going to show up to the emergency room with exacerbations needing like ICU visits and stuff. We're going to pay their way. Do we want to pay for preventative health care? Or are we going to pay for really high-end intubations and, long-term?
Sure.
So
as someone who has, unfortunately in my life, I have been intubated and in the ICU. I am so grateful that I was taken care of. And it's like, what do we do? Not treat people. Things happen.
And part of being in a rural area is taking care of your neighbors and not asking people for their paperwork when they come to the emergency room. We need to just take care of people. And the fact that we're making it harder and harder for people just to be kind, we're becoming a cruel society. That's not who I think we stand.
Right.
That's not what I stand for. So, that's why I stepped up. And I think it's really incredible, really, really important that we have somebody who has deep roots here, who's served on community services board, who knows the behavioral health needs, but also has served on river boards and worked with farmers to make sure that they get grants through EQIP and through Turnkey and some of these things that are local options for just implementing best management practices on their farms, getting that technical assistance and doing the right thing. Because at the end of the day, without a functioning environment and ecosystems and economy, we don't have it. So that's the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
Well, wow, 10 generations sounds like pretty deep roots to me. Just a curiosity, what year was that first generation?
Well, I'd say 1810 would have been my great over on this side of the Allegheny Plateau, over in the Page County. Arthur Barlow was a guy who brought the Queen over to Jamestown in 1607.
Wow.
So that's my great granddad 15 generations ago, but he's down in Isle of Wight County, or his remains are, I assume.
Wow, those are some roots, all right.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, listen, you were just talking about these issues of healthcare and how important they are, and they are, of course. And Democrats tend to talk a lot about providing important services to people, healthcare, hospitals, family care, child care.
Yeah.
But we don't talk a real lot about rural prosperity. and what's needed for that. Is that a mistake? Can we do better on that?
Oh, it definitely is. I think the interplay with rural issues and healthcare is huge. You can't have a baby in Page County. You can't have a baby in
That's
Highland
right.
County. That's the current situation. Now, if we
Mm.
take $1 trillion away from rural healthcare through Medicaid cuts in the next year or so, we're going to see a lot of more procedural clinics and everything fall by
Right.
the wayside. So it's already bad. But you're talking about in rural areas, and I don't know how they come up with rural versus urban, but in rural areas, you're talking about a 2.5 times as long to get to the hospital as an
Yeah.
average urban area. We already
Mhm.
have a transportation problem. It's going to just get worse. You know, people who are having to drive
Yeah.
45 minutes to have a baby right now are going to have to drive an hour and 45. So, yeah, we have to tackle that because we all have to, all depend on healthcare. Of course, there's manufacturing and shipping and all this stuff in rural areas, but ag is something that we've been focusing on with this campaign because we really got to get our heads around how do Democrats, how do progressives talk competently about ag and talk about real solutions, not just, you know, these vague platitudes about like making it easier for farmers. Well, what's that mean? What do we
Yeah.
effectuate?
Yeah. Mm.
I wanted to push us to dig a little deeper there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about family farms. They've been doing not very well under Trump, the Trump administration, but in general, America's agricultural policy hasn't really been very good for family farms in a long time. And we've created not just in ag, but across the spectrum, like monocultures, if you will.
Yeah.
Then we become incredibly dependent on export markets. And when those fail, we subsidize the farm again. And it kind of is a little nuts.
You're exactly right, Parson. And I'll just say real quick, you bring a couple things to mind right there. Like farmers don't want handouts. They just want functioning markets. And the fact that we
Right.
have that we have monocultures, like you say, that have been based upon foreign export economies. And now we're seeing retaliatory tariffs because of Trump's big plan to arbitrarily place tariffs on our closest trading allies. We're looking at retaliatory tariffs that are now, you know, we've got a lot of soybean farmers around here. I've got a good friend who planted 55 acres in soybeans. Now he doesn't have a market for it because
Mhm.
of retaliatory tariffs from China. And we're not going to be able to fill that void that China's market for soybeans is leaving. That's a 1.1, I think, billion-dollar economy just for Virginia in soy.
That's right.
So I mean, that's one thing. And then I'll just say one more other thing before it slips on my mind. I'm so sorry. But
Okay.
right to repair issue. I've got
yes.
a buddy who is a diesel mechanic, and he just goes off about the issue of proprietary diagnostics and how John Deere, the more and more complex all of our farm equipment becomes, the more and more corporations are holding proprietary diagnostics information so that you can only get stuff worked on at people who know people.
It's a very good point.
That's a big problem. Go ahead.
Right. No, you've been, that's exactly something we've been talking about is that how do you protect family farms or how can they come together to keep from being trapped by big corporate middlemen, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the buyers, like the wholesale buyers of pigs and hogs, those sorts of things, but also what you talk about there. But you mentioned something about local co-ops as a real success. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. The Valley Poultry Growers Cooperative is one example of a thriving situation. You know, the original American business model was cooperative, and it was people working together, worker-owned industries, and that's how our local economy in the Shenandoah Valley was founded around cooperative models. Farmer owned, you know, that way we can make sure that we have kind of democratized profits. And that's something that we could build on that model and have cooperative beef production processing facilities, packaging facilities. We could also do that with dairy. We've got 130 dairies in the Shenandoah Valley alone. We're shipping most of those dairy products, most of those liquid dairy products out of Virginia into North Carolina and Pennsylvania. And meanwhile, here in the Shenandoah Valley, we are processing more almond milk than we are actual cow milk. And those almonds are coming in from, as you can imagine, thousands of miles away. That doesn't make
Well, I was about to ask you, yeah, like are we a major grower of almonds?
No, that's a great question. No, yeah, look at your window. You're not going to see an almond tree.
I have not.
So that's something where we could take this model of poultry cooperatives and really blow it up and have local production, processing, and packaging for beef and dairy so that, the beef farmers are not waiting 18 months to have their beef processed because we have a dearth of processing slaughterhouses around here. Secondly, the dairy is something that, if we kept that all in the valley, that's a liquid market that we have. We have enough of a market for that to make it solvent and really have a good home-based production here where we're not shipping things all over the place, and let California keep their almonds.
That's fascinating. Just curious on that. Why are those sorts of co-ops and regional production processes not happening right now? Is it because congressional policy, government policy is just not thinking about it? Is it benign neglect, or is it the way we do agricultural policy actively hurting local autonomy?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of farmers are asking about this. I've talked to a lot of farmers who are right now trying to band together and work on beef processing facilities here at home that are larger and can handle more product. I've talked to dairy farmers who feel the same way, but the politicians, meanwhile, are still supporting a farm bill that gives all those subsidies to corporate farms. The average farm size in Virginia is 185 acres. So those subsidies are not helping us, but they haven't for the last 45 years.
That's right.
Not like Democrats or Republicans have done anything about it. So I really think that on the part of politicians, it is benign neglect. But local farmers, local producers know that this is a problem that could be fixed if we had real appropriations going to things other than tax breaks for billionaires. If we actually invested in local communities and had some of this stuff, it would really make a big difference. So yeah, I'd go with your hypothesis.
And that's where the Democratic Party could make a difference.
I think so. I think really, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about rural small businesses. They're being wiped out by mega corporations. Think about independent pharmacies, which I wouldn't say they're all lost and forgotten yet, but it seems to be the trend. Grocery stores and any entrepreneur, initiatives to survive in the, I'm finger quoting, Amazon stranglehold on distribution. Yeah. What can Congress do to level the playing field for small businesses, and how do we restore small business freedom to not be forced into unfair deals by mega corporations and politicians?
Yeah, great question. And again, I'll just say on our last point with the co-ops, if we had more local production, processing, packaging, we would have larger profit margins for our local grocery stores, cheaper products ultimately for our consumers here. And then also, but we also have to, the biggest a wound, I think, like a nurse, the biggest wound right now is this administration. And if you want to stop the bleed, you have to put pressure on the wound. And, right now we have young people who are reeling from 15 to 18% unemployment rates for 20 to 30-year-olds. And a lot of that, I think, is due to the fact that there's market uncertainty for those employers. Mm-hmm. They're saying, hey, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what tariffs are going to do over the next few years. Mm-hmm. I've been able to stem the tide, stem the bleed for the last year. But what's this going to mean for the next 3? We still have this chaotic administration, and young people are paying the price for it because they're not getting jobs that they should be, because employers, understandably, are kind of in a state of vapor lock. So that's, I think, related to the small business problem and the fact that there's so much market uncertainty that is really adding insult to injury right now.
We've had a lot of folks on here when we were talking with candidates for the House of Delegates in that race, and we've recognized a lot of pragmatic thinkers, some problem solvers, and I like what you just said, think like a nurse, which is a unique additive to the conversation. I think that that kind of hit me. Try to put pressure on and heal the wound.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got to bleed, you got to make sure to stop that bleed before you start moving on and giving that person vitamins. Right now we have a problem that we need to address. And once we address it, then we can move on to things that I really believe strongly. And I believe strongly in the fact that we need to invest in public lands access. If people don't get access to our public lands around here, they're not going to know what we have around here to protect. I think we need to look at single payer health care. We need to look at a lot of these things that are critical, but first and foremost, we're just going to have to put pressure on that wound, like you say.
Right. Well, because we are rural Virginia, our land and our people, it's our land and our home.
Right.
It's our greatest asset.
Yeah. I used to work, like I might have mentioned, I used to work at Douthit State Park, and Douthit State Park's motto is "in the middle of everywhere," and I always loved that because a lot of times we think that rural communities are just kind of out in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing going on. No, rural communities are the center of everything. That's where our products come from. The Roanoke gets its water from the Roanoke River and 3 impoundments. Harrisonburg gets its water from Switzer and the Shenandoah River and some other rural areas are where all of those resources originate. We've got 60% of our highways and rail commerce go through rural areas. If we do not have safe rail and safe highways, that's going to ultimately really, really disproportionately affect our rural communities because they're the communities that bear the brunt of shipping, of production, of processing. So I really think that rural areas like Douthit are in the center of everywhere.
We're more than just respite and vacay. We're more than just a fun destination.
That's right. But if somebody does need a retreat from all the chaos in the city, this is where they come first.
And that's exactly what we want to be able to maintain 100%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's imagine that I needed some income, but there are no obvious jobs around me. And so I decide I'm going to go into business, and I have a great little product that I want to sell to consumers.
Yeah.
And I say, great, I've got through Amazon, I can reach the entire country. There's advertising and distribution. I say, well, I can do it this way.
Yeah.
But then you start looking at it and you realize that the fees that Amazon imposes and the advertising you have to do through Amazon and the distribution you have to do through Amazon. And in the end, close to 50% of the price I get goes to Amazon, and I have to do everything else with only 50%. That seems a little crazy, doesn't it? Is there something that the federal government can step in and do there to help people out?
The consolidation of wealth right now, as you guys know, is unprecedented. It's occurring at a quicker rate, and it's more egregious than it's ever been before. So I couldn't agree with you more. And we're dependent on only a few. The S&P is changing, is fluctuating daily based upon the meanderings of a few tech companies.
Big Seven. Yeah.
And instead of being reflective of all of those companies that create our steel, that create our power, that drive our trucks, all these things that are so important. You didn't mention it yet. I hope you don't mind me deviating, but data centers.
Jump right in.
When you talk about Amazon and people going online to get all this stuff, data centers are eating us up, and they're going to disproportionately affect rural areas. They're coming in, they're stealing our electricity. I don't think that's hyperbolic to say. And they're going to steal our rural land because it's cheaper than other places. And you know what? At the end of the day, my well went dry in the last drought.
No.
Me and my wife had to pay $3,500 to get that well set back in and that well pump put back in. The data centers are going to be drinking all of our well water. I mean, we're talking 100,000 gallons of water per day, per center, and we have to put guardrails on this stuff. Talk about closed loop cooling. We have to talk about the fact that geothermal has to be utilized in each one of these facilities. I never thought that I'd say it, but drill, baby, drill, get geothermal units in there so that we actually make sure that cooling is utilizing some of these resources that we already have, but nobody wants to do it because it costs too much. Well, if they're going to make this much money off us, I think it's high time that we require that of these large conglomerates that are going to be eating up all of our good rural land.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of the film I Drink Your Milkshake, if y'all remember that. Anyway, There Will Be Blood. It's about a ruthless oil man. It's a metaphor, but I digress.
Awesome.
We like to look at the link between family farms and small business and workers.
Yeah.
Right. And Democrats talk a lot about, and very importantly, about the needs of workers to have a real living wage and raising the minimum wage and changing some of the so-called right to work laws, which are really about organizing, right? But I think for a lot of rural residents, though there are no common interests here. Right. What's your sense of that? Is that really true? Is there not a link in terms of what family farms and small businesses and workers?
No, I think, I mean, just take, for instance, our vilification right now of the entire immigrant community. What's that going to do to our poultry industry? And I've got a lot of friends who have poultry farms, but if y'all probably heard about the Nebraska processing plant that was shut down for weeks on end.
That's right.
Had 65 people just drug out of their plant. Like if that happens around here, you're talking about a real hit to the economy. And we got to figure this out. The immigration crisis alone is going to eat our lunch if we don't have real action. And there are bills out there, the Dignity Act, which could really, really solve this. I mean, we shut down the border. We make sure that it's strict border crossings, but we make sure that every one of those people who's been law-abiding for a certain amount of time, paying into Social Security, that we make sure that those people are taken care of and fast-track their citizenship progress. So that's one example that comes to mind for me. But I think for sure, we need to have collective bargaining. That's the only reason we have weekends right now is because of collective bargaining.
That's right.
People forget about all the stuff collective bargaining is brought to us. And we can't just, there are a lot of people out there. The fact that we've been sitting on $7.25 national minimum wage for the last, how long has it been? 25 years? That's ridiculous. And it falls on the shoulders of Democrats and Republicans. We had all three branches of government. Why didn't we do anything? So, I don't lay this at the feet of either party. I think everybody's to blame, but we got to stand up for our workers. And $12.41 in Virginia is not a viable living wage for people, even in rural areas, because we've got higher transportation costs than everybody in urban areas. There is
absolutely.
And Lord forbid you have to travel if you have to have a child.
That's right.
Better
make sure that you get a hotel room close to the hospital, I guess. I mean, seriously.
It's so tragic that I'm not laughing, but it's so ridiculous that that's our reality.
Right. In the richest country in the world, we are looking at spending 250% per capita on healthcare for people. My wife is pregnant right now. I worry.
Congratulations.
Yes. Well, thank you. But I do think about the fact that we are socially in a place where she's not as safe if her health is threatened for some reason. That's a real concern for me.
Sure.
Fortunately, we are right close to 81, so we can hop on if there's not traffic. But Ben Klein, thanks to Ben Klein, there might be traffic. There usually is, but we can get to the hospital. So there's all those considerations that really have a real effect on rural folks.
Sure.
So what do you, as you think about running for a seat in Congress, where do you see what Congress can do to make rural prosperity more of a reality? And to what extent does this just fall on the state level and even the local level?
Well, there are, of course, we all know that the Farm Bill is a big driver of those subsidies and things, and I think they need to look at eligibility requirements so that they can have an offshoot of subsidies that just go to farms that are under a certain threshold or something,
right?
Like that, so that we think about spreading the wealth, because we need corporate farms too. But I think that family farms are really the bread and butter for Virginia, at least. So that's a huge thing that I think is a federal thing. Also, USDA gives out grants for co-ops, like the dairy co-ops and beef co-ops. Those grants in tandem with appropriations, like Ben Klein's on the appropriations subcommittee, but I've never heard him talk about real money for locally based processing or packaging for any of this stuff that really could affect a lot of farmers in a good way around here. So that seems like something that we could really do at the federal level. State level, of course, there are soil and water conservation districts and all these things that really help build out those federal programs. But I think ultimately it is something that federal dollars could, if somebody went in there and really gave it the time to look at the Farm Bill and where that money's going right now, I think they could figure out eligibility criteria so that we don't overly make everything too bureaucratic. We don't add red tape, but at the same time, we could really make it so that there are direct payments to local farms to make sure that they prosper and don't just get by.
Yeah. So that instead of paying them to produce soybeans that no one eats here, we support them to produce all the fresh tomatoes we need. And right now we're all importing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, EQIP and some of those things through USDA, they give high tunnel grants, 75-25 high tunnel grants to small family farms. We got one that's a 50-foot long high tunnel, but that's something that people could have hothouse tomatoes that are just thriving in Virginia. But the fact that we're shipping them in from 5,000 miles away doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess people like to drive.
That's right. It creates employment for truck drivers.
There you go.
No knocking on them, but yeah, how do we find a way to make it work?
Well, I really appreciate you guys just speaking up for rural Virginia and not just maintaining the status quo. One thing that I would mention, fellas, is the need for land transfer incentives from older farmers to younger farmers that don't have as much capital, but are moving in from maybe suburban areas and want to get back into farming, want to have a CSA or want to have a local farmers market option to diversify their income. And there are ways I think we could utilize current conservation easements and some of these incentives to help older farmers leverage their debt, help them be able to devalue their farms, but keep it in production. And when they are ready to sell, it sells at a lower rate because it's ag land,
Right.
But keep on doing all that stuff. And it would then be more attainable for a younger farmer to be able to buy into that. I think that that's something that we're not utilizing very well right now because it does get a little tedious, but we need to be able to connect the dots because
That's right.
the average age of a farmer in Western Virginia right now is 61 years old. Only 8% of our farmers are under 35. Our farmers are getting older and getting out of the profession, and we're going to have to make sure that we make it easier or more attainable for younger people to get into the business, because a lot of farmers don't have heirs who want to get into it. They saw how hard dad worked or mom worked. But we have to be able to fuel that regeneration of farmers.
Because if we don't do that, then it'll be the big ag industrial combine to buy that land up, and they're going to want to put it in the monocultures like soybeans because that's the easiest thing for them to do.
Yeah.
And then we get in this fragile situation of, China doesn't want to buy our exports anymore. Now what do we do?
Well, and also as a born and raised rural Virginian, there's a lot of pride in the culture and what it means to be part of this area, and we don't want to sacrifice that either.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, as a big follower of Wendell Berry and Aldo Leopold and some of these conservationists and poets, I really think that the more we consolidate farms, the less edge habitat we have, the less water protection we have.
That's right.
I feel like we got to be thinking long term about what are we doing to our world and how do we make sure that we sustain ecosystems while sustaining small rural economies. And I think this is the way to do it, and we have to make sure that transfer of wealth occurs more easily, because right now it's not very efficient.
Wendell Berry, he is the mentor of my mentor, Terry Blanton of Kentucky. Anyway.
Awesome. Let me write that down.
Pete, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation. How can listeners follow your campaign?
Hey, well, I'd love for everybody to check me out at petebarlow.com. Pete Barlow for Congress on Facebook. It's going to be an exciting time. We have a primary that's going to be on June 16th of this year. Of course, we're getting started early, but I want everybody to really, we got to get people showing up. And you don't have to register with a party in Virginia to be able to vote in the Democratic primary. So I want to make sure that everybody who wants to be involved in the Democratic process show up and vote in the primary. I don't care who you are. We just need people to use their voices. So
exactly. And we will do our best that we can from our end to remind people it's exciting and invigorating to have voices stepping up and stepping in for the Democratic Party here.
We're seeing a lot more people running in the congressional primaries this year compared to last. It shows the degree of excitement and interest on the Democratic Party side in rural Virginia. And that's a great thing.
And I'll just say, just to build on that, times are changing, you know.
That's right.
In Virginia's Congressional District 6, we saw the voters move 14.7 points towards the Democrats in the last election. And this is because people can change and people are dynamic. People are issues based and not party based. So I think we need to get past our parties and just talk about real policy solutions to help working class families. And then we'll have it. We don't need to keep on talking about just splitting people up along party lines.
I love that. Thank you so much, Pete, for joining us and for your perspectives today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And we will be following your campaign with interest and hopefully get a chance to talk again.
Well, and of course, y'all don't forget to hit like and subscribe. You can find New Rural Virginia podcast anywhere and everywhere you get your audio. We appreciate it when you tune in and listen to our conversations. Join the conversations, send us a message.
That's right. We would really love to have a Christmas present, which would be just a like from you.
Yes. Yeah. Some likes would be great gifts. And for a stocking stuffer, join our Substack newsletter, The Rural Angle.
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas, joyful Hanukkah, happy holidays, y'all.
And hopefully we'll see you again in 2026.
Stay tuned.
Ho, 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 ho.